In this video, we'll be testing a huge lot of Crestron commercial video upscaling and video switching gear from the late 2000s. A huge rack-mountable modular switcher lets you take all sorts of inputs, including a Super Nintendo, and output it to a distant location over Cat5e cable on something Crestron called DM. We'll see what the input lag is like on this thing, figure out how it all works to hopefully improve my VGA capture setup, and get a feel for what your options might have been for setting up remote conference rooms 15 years ago. Let's get into it. On the bench, I've got this huge pile of Crestron video switching and upscaling gear. I don't even really know where to begin. This thing is sort of going to be the brains of the operation. Let's take a look at that first. This impressive thing here is a Crestron DM MD 8x8. The basic idea is you can take any of the 8 available inputs and route them to one or more of the 8 supported outputs. So you could have like 3 computers and a projector and another HDMI source on 1 through 5, and you can send any and all of them to any and all of these. Crestron calls that a route, deciding where the input maps to the output. But it's a lot more interesting than your typical video switcher because the inputs and outputs are modular. Got inputs 1 through 4 and 5 through 8 on the left and right here, and this middle section is for 8 outputs. For example, on the left here, I've got a DVI input in 1 and 2, and I can actually get a VGA to DVI adapter here, and it will fully support VGA upscaling to HDMI out. And then I've just got 2 simple HDMI ins right here, and then some juicier stuff on the right here. This is a combination component and composite in. This is a BNC component and composite in, apparently. And then we've got component with the left and right audio, more kind of what you'd expect from a typical component situation with the 5 wires. We'll probably play with that one the most. And then another DVI, RGB, VGA to HDMI input here. There's 7 total outputs, and I've got this card at the bottom. We see you have this DM out, also an HDMI flowing off of port 7 in this case, and then we've also got another DM out here. Up top we've got a double height card, DM or HDMI out right here, another DM, and then 2 more HDMI outs for a total of 4 outputs. But what's this DM stuff? Well, it stands for digital media, and I think it is a proprietary sort of technology Crestron came out with, and it lets you transfer video, audio, USB, control signals, Ethernet, all over a physical Cat5e cable, RJ45 cable. I still don't have the best mental model of how all this works. We'll develop one together as we go through this video. But basically, I could have a computer coming in here to my DVI. I could route that to this DM out, and over RJ45, I could send it to one of these. This is a DM room controller. You can see this one says DM in rather than DM out, and it also has an HDMI out. So this could be in some remote room somewhere, you know, in an office building, and I could route any of this stuff I want to an HDMI out over there. That's the basic idea and why this stuff is interesting. It's not just your typical switcher. I'm also really interested to see what its scaling capabilities are like. A few weeks ago, I was offered a deal I couldn't pass up. A longtime viewer named Josh reached out and sold me a Sun Microsystems full-height server rack. It's still in pieces. In fact, for context, here is one of the 4 panels that comprise that rack. I still got it in parts because I don't know where I'm going to put it. 2 of these stacked vertically on each side to give you an idea of how big that thing is. So I'll be looking at that in future videos, but let's get back to this video stuff. But for 50 bucks, he sold me all this stuff as well. He had a massive lot of this stuff he found on eBay. This is probably like a 1/5 or a 1/6 of what he had. So pretty generous deal. I could not say no for that price. And the more I was looking at it, the more interested I was becoming in it. So I'm excited to play around with this stuff. Huge thanks to you, Josh. But as you've noticed, I've got more than just the switcher here. Got this DM room controller, 4K scaler, and that's the guy I was showing you that takes that DM in from a DM out on the switcher. And of course you can have a local HDMI monitor. It does more than that. You can control some relays. Here's audio, IR in and out, and this looks like serial communication. You can transfer serial and audio and all sorts of stuff over that digital media cable. We'll be messing with this. It's interesting it has scalar in its product name, and it looks pretty sophisticated inside. I wonder if scaling happens on this device at the TV. That'd be weird. I would imagine it happens on the huge matrix switcher, but I don't know. We'll find out, I guess. And then he threw in this complete in-box VGA scaler. It is an HD scaler VGA E, I think. Let's take a look at this thing. Nice little guy. This does not actually interact in any way with this thing. I think it's an independent VGA to HDMI scaler, so excited to see what the quality is on this. That could come in very handy, and it feels very well built. It's pretty hefty. And then I've got this DM computer center, a DM-TX201C, and it has DM out with a bunch of inputs: USB HID, human interaction device, mouse and keyboard, HDMI in or VGA in, and of course audio. I think the idea with this is you have a remote computer hooked up to this, and you can send out USB and video and audio over DM, get it into a DM in here, which will require a special card I'll show you, and then of course send it back over DM out somewhere else. Speaking of DM in, this is what those expansion cards look like when they're pulled out. And this one takes DM in, meaning I can have that remote box I was just showing you as an input to my switcher, I think. And here's a really, really interesting detail. Every module has a local HDMI out. Like you saw before, I can hook up a local monitor to every single one. My understanding is that officially it's for daisy chaining, so I could take this and put it into yet another 8-way switcher or 16 or 32-bit switcher, or just use them as a local monitor, of course. This really implies to me that the conversion, the scaling, is happening on card. So it's taking this composite component, scaling it, because I can hook up a monitor right here. That'd be really handy. We'll play with that. This DM in card was included in the lot, but I forgot it in the truck, and so I started playing around with this stuff and totally forgot I had this, and of course bought a couple more on eBay because I wanted to try this remote DM in thing. These weren't expensive, but it seems like I bought some heftier versions. This is a DMC CDSP. My new ones say DMC 4K CDSP, so I think not every DM connection is created equal. The 4K versions I had got on eBay seem to have a little bit more going on electronically too, this big daughter board, compared to the one I got in the lot. And then finally, there's this thing. It's a Crestron Professional Control Processor Pro 2, as it's badged. I think this is for remotely controlling older units over serial. So like predecessors to this one, control them as, you know, with this as one main control box, I think. On the back, it's got some expansion. It has a LAN module included, probably some remote software you can use to control this box and everything plugged into it. It's got a serial port for the computer and then 6 COM ports for the units you would be controlling. And presumably, we're not really going to mess with this today. We'll plug it in and see if we can talk to it over serial just to see what it's all about. But our main focus is going to be doing some scaling and video switching stuff with this big guy. I've been really deep in the upscaling game for a very long time, typically in service of retro video gaming. So if you were to hook up a Super Nintendo, let's say, and hook it up over Composite. Composite is the yellow, red, and white we are used to here in North America. And you're pretty excited. You're about to pop in the best video game ever made in the history of video games. You've got this hooked up to your HD flat screen TV. Let me tell you, you're going to be severely disappointed. First of all, it's going to look like total crap. Second of all, and more importantly, it's going to play like total crap. You're going to be sitting there having way less fun than you remember having because of input lag. Modern TVs have to upconvert this, and they do a pretty crappy job of it. And it's processor intensive because TVs are cheap. And they try to turn this into the HD signal on your TV, and they introduce input lag, a lag of many milliseconds between the time you're pushing the physical button on the controller and you see the TV respond. Now, I'm not a big input lag gamer or complainer, except for this old stuff, because it was meant to be played on the CRT with 0 lag. And when you're used to that, when lag gets introduced, it's very annoying. If you were super into retro video game upscaling back in the day, you would have got this. This is the XRGB Mini, aka Framemeister, and I've had this for, geez, I don't know, like 10 years, and it used to be the only name in town for getting really good upscaling. Like seriously, this thing walked so that the OSSC and the RetroTink and all the amazing array of options we have now could run. In fact, I remember I had to buy this from a website that would ship it from Japan, and it came in Japanese. I don't speak or read Japanese, and so you'd have to go on these forums, and they would tell you the exact buttons and screens to get through to turn the thing into English. Kind of funny. And here it is. It takes RGB in and produces the all-important lag-free HDMI out. But this used to be a huge pain in the ass, and not just because you had to buy this $300 thing from Japan. It uses SCART. Now, my Japanese and European viewers are smirking at me because they've had SCART the whole time. A SCART cable looks like this, and it's got a hell of a lot more pins than this crap we were dealing with in the United States. Problem number one, you gotta go buy a bunch of fancy SCART cables. This is a Super Nintendo to SCART cable. Problem number two, Japan and Europe, generally speaking, use different SCART pinouts that are incompatible. So you have to decide, am I gonna stick with Japanese SCART for all my retro games, or am I gonna switch to Euro? I went Euro, my thinking being that there's more European countries, so I was gonna be able to find more of these cables, and it seemed like there was more of them on eBay back in the day. So I've got my SCART into the Framemeister. I gotta convert that to Euro SCART. Then I gotta remember to only buy Euro SCART cables, and if I accidentally buy a Japanese one, I gotta take my adapter off. But it was so worth it, let me show you. I'm gonna get this hooked up to this relatively new HDMI gaming monitor. I think it's 4K. Look how much work this is. Oh, and then you get more than 2 consoles hooked up and you inevitably start splurging on like low production count, bespoke SCART switchers. But look at the results. That is pixel perfect output from a stock Super Nintendo. They happen to be able to output RGB. The Framemeister converts it to HDMI, and you won't be able to tell, but you'll have to believe me when I tell you, there is zero input lag. It is an absolute pleasure to play. If I had some speakers on this thing, the audio is perfect. It's absolutely incredible. So suffice it to say, I'm pretty passionate about RGB and analog upscaling to HDMI, and I'm excited to see what this industrial kind of serious stuff can do. I can't find out exactly when this came out, but the oldest manual I found was from 2010, so it's probably at least 15 years old. Of course, it's not meant for low input lag gaming, but I'm excited to see what this thing can do. Let me clean all this up and we'll see what this big guy is all about. I'm about to power this thing on, and you can see the module boards sit really flush once they're screwed in, except for this one, this double height output board. It just really doesn't, something doesn't seem right. It slots in there and the edge connector connects just fine, as I'll show you. I had mixed and matched these to my heart's content. Josh let me do that when I picked everything up from his lot of stuff. But yeah, something just doesn't seem quite right about this double height board. There it is right there. You can sort of see way into the chassis here. It feels like it's slotting in, but it just doesn't physically fit this opening, which is odd compared to the rest of the cards. Anyway, we'll try it later, but I'm going to do a first power on without it. But we will leave all 8 input boards in. It's got this LAN board here, which maybe came stock. It does look removable. I think there's a bunch of software you can use to control these things. And we'll have the one output board at the bottom. It's one of those deals where you don't have a power button. So we'll get it plugged in and then we'll flip the power on. Wonder how loud this thing is. First power up, video's over, it doesn't work. I won't be able to fix this thing. Pretty loud. Zoomed in on the screen here, detecting boot mode. System boot. That seems good. Oh, this reminds me. I'm pretty sure you can send audio from one input to a single output and just the video from another, and USB from one. You know, you can really mix and match here. It's pretty interesting. I will be back when something interesting happens. Not 3 seconds after I said that, something really interesting happened. It basically makes no noise now. So the fans spin up. It must have like temperature sensors in there to decide if everything's okay. It's near silent now. Digital, oh, fans revving a little bit. Digital media 8x8 switcher. Kind of like this cool green display. I think we are up. Looks like we can look through all 8 inputs. Password, I don't want to deal with that. That means it has a password. Or maybe. Let's see if it's just 0. Uh-oh. We'll figure that out later. That's fine. I think we go to route mode. Yeah, look at this. I can send input 1 to output. Well, I don't have an output. I think output 7 and 8 are the only ones that should be available. And see this, how I'm selecting 1 as my input, and then it's blinking 7 saying it's going to send it there. I can also send it to 8. 1 input, 2 outputs. Just leave it on 7 and press enter. That means we've routed input 1 to 7, which I think is what we want. Just got back from my buddy's house. He's letting me borrow this Super Nintendo 2-component cable, so we're just going to get right to the point. Everyone wants to know, are we gaming on this thing? What's the gameability here? So I'm going to use this input here, which is correct for this cable, and it happens to be input number 7. I'm going to have to be kind of careful throughout this video not to jostle this thing back and forth too much as I switch it around to mess with it. So we want to make a route, and we want to say input 7, go to output 7. Okay, and we're going to say enter to submit that route. Get the Nintendo hooked up, flip it on. Nothing is happening. You can see there it does know that the Nintendo's on. Let's turn it off. See how fast it updates. Yeah, pretty quick. Now it's saying, I can't tell if that's in focus. No video, gonna turn it on. Yeah, almost instantly it knows. Video coming in. Wonder if that whole DM out thing is critical and you can't use that onboard HDMI. Input out is going to output 7. Well, I'm just going to slap it on the local HDMI out. Yeah, monitor's coming to life. Well, maybe. It lit up, it like thinks something's going on. This is going well. Tried a different HDMI cable on that local HDMI out. By local, I mean the one attached to the component board. And in this mode, the monitor acts as if there's something going in. It'll go into sleep mode if I plug it into the other HDMI out, but nothing shows up. Oh. But if I throw it through a USB to HDMI capture device, I can see the screen kind of blinking on and off every once in a while. It's horrendous. Okay, don't know what that means. Okay, we're just going to go in blind on this DM stuff to this 4K room controller. So I've got the DM out going into the DM in of this thing, and it's my understanding that this can carry PoE, power over Ethernet. It does have a 24-volt little power adapter here in case this doesn't work, but you probably noticed there's these PoE ins next to all the DM ports. You can give that PoE power, and theoretically it powers the remote device, so we're going to try that. So I'll get the monitor hooked up to this guy. So nothing's happening now because we're going to give this thing some PoE straight from my Unify router. I don't know if that's what you're supposed to do. Well, that didn't work. This light's not on. Okay, I'll plug this into a actual power adapter, I guess. Wait a second. These lights are on. What's this mean? Oh, it's coming to life. Okay, that's just with PoE. Still nothing on the screen. Let's boot up, I guess, for a while. So far, you know, a little harder to use than the Framemeister, but I'm probably just doing something wrong. I mean, let's use this top card. Why not? I was using this one because it has the easy audio connection. This one's got this SP diff thing. Let's do this. Switch all our inputs around on the front. Here's a clue. I don't think this should be at 30 Hertz. I'm in the NTSC world, as is that monitor. That needs to be something like 59 or 60 Hertz. That might be our problem. I suspect I need to figure out the password situation, and I think you can like configure these modules, maybe? For now, let's hook up Composite and see if that gives us any difference. it looked like those were component and composite cards. So we'll try that out, I think. Well, it knows it's composite and that it's 30 Hertz, but look who just showed up to the party. It's of course pretty fuzzy because it's just composite, but yeah, it's a good... Sorry, I'm just clicking around to see how it feels. Yeah, it looks like crap. This is just what composite looks like. But it's doing a really fine upscaling job in terms of like input lag. Yeah, the input lag is very nice, meaning it's minimal. Okay. Yeah, this is feeling really good. So it's a good upscaler in terms of speed and everything. And you know, you could play Mario like this. It's not that big of a deal. That is interesting. And this is going over this DM cable, which is powering this thing with power over Ethernet on the one cable and passing the audio and video. That's the beauty of this DM digital media thing. HDMI out right to the monitor I was just showing you. So yeah, okay. I think I'm just doing something wrong, or maybe that it doesn't like that component cable. I wonder if I have a different system with a different component cable we could try out. I can't find any other component to retro video game gear. This cable I'm borrowing from my buddy is an HD Retrovision. I've used this cable before on a normal TV and works perfectly. So it's not exactly passive, but I don't think it's doing anything too smart. So I'll have to explore that in the future. Keeping with our Super Nintendo theme for just a few more moments. This is an analog NT, I think. Anyway, it is a FPGA perfect recreation of this Super Nintendo, and it outputs perfect HDMI. So let's try an HDMI input to the big guy here and just, you know, see what it looks like, see how it works. I've got a couple of these just straight HDMI in. So just plug that into input number 4. Get the analog set up here. These things are sweet if you can get your hands on them. I don't know that they sell them anymore. I bought this forever ago. It detected HDMI 1080p at 60 Hertz input 4 right away. And I've set up a route from 4 to 7. Okay. And not a lot of surprise here. This is the boot screen of the NT. You can run the cartridge and it's probably going to look pretty good. Or it won't load. I think I had put like a really dirty carton here at one point. So I just cleaned the cartridge a little bit. Booting back up. Suppose I probably need to do some audio tests. We'll do that with some computers. That's kind of the point. There it goes. So yeah, this looks perfect. Me filming the screen is not doing any of this justice. But yeah, obviously this is like a perfect, way better even than the Framemeister recreation because it is an FPGA perfect clone of the Super Nintendo, pixel perfect, as you can see. So that's working great. It's worth noting at this point that I'm hooking everything up here, and remember, it's traveling over this Cat5e cable to this kind of remote location, which happens to be on my same desk. But you could have this like in an entertainment center, hidden away. These things take Bluetooth controllers if you want. Pretty slick. It's a pretty impressive feat. And especially thinking back, this is 15-year-old stuff. This would have blown my mind 15 years ago. Let's see what those DVI cards are all about. This is a Sun Microsystems Sunray. It is a thin client, meaning it doesn't have a hard drive or anything like that. It operates over the network, and you would have your local monitor and keyboard hooked up to it. It requires a server to do anything interesting, but when I power it up, it will produce video over this DVI port, and we're going to see how that looks on this thing. I'm going to leave the Super Nintendo running so that we can see what it's like to switch between two inputs. And I've got my Amazon Basics DVI cable here, only the best. You know, it's so fun to just hook up as much crap as you can, you know, to all your crap at once. So let's get this in here, and then I got to go find a power adapter for this guy. 12 volt center positive. I am almost sure that's what this thing wants. So let's get that in there. It has come to life. So let's set up a route from input 1 to the TV over here. Got you pointed at the TV, and I'm going to set up the route right now. So I'm doing input 1 to 7, pressing enter. Oh yeah, look at that, that looks good. Yeah, so again, this is a thin client. It's off looking for a Sunray server, but that looks really good. I like that. Okay, we can retire our Super Nintendo experiments. One of the reasons I'm interested in any of this stuff is I've got this cheap, USB to HDMI adapter thing. Obviously, I make a lot of videos where I need to capture either DVI or VGA, and usually I just point it at a monitor and kind of hope that you guys can suffer through it. I'm interested in capturing some of this retro, computer content at a higher fidelity and with audio. That would be really nice. We're not going to experiment with that with the Sun. We'll hook up a computer and do VGA and all that and see what the audio is like. But let's hook this up to OBS, Open Broadcast Studio, how I record my screen, and see what happens. I do realize this is getting a little convoluted, but I'm going to hook the HDMI out. Remember, all our video out is flowing through this thing right now. And then I'm going to plug in my little capture USB piece of crap from Amazon, and I'll show you what that looks like. Yeah, I think that looks really good. That is the capture from the USB card. You can see it's live. We can see the Sunray is moving that little dialogue around trying to find a server. This is pretty promising. I've had a lot of trouble with this adapter, particularly when it comes to VGA inputs. That is what we're going to try next. Let's see if we can get this DM Computer Center working. It has a DM out, meaning it's taking a bunch of inputs and sending it to our big switcher over there. So I can do USB, HDMI, or RGB in. RGB meaning VGA in this case. So we're going to hook up a computer to this thing, send it over DM out to the switcher. But over here at the moment, we've only got DVI, HDMI, and my component composite inputs. All I've got over here is DM out. So we need a DM in card. And I believe that's where this DM in module comes into play. It's going to take a Cat5e from our computer setup here and take it in. So let's get this slotted in the machine. I've got everything unhooked and powered off. You're supposed to power it off to unhook any of these or take out any of these modules. So here's a DVI module, the very one we were just using actually. And it does have like a tray that it slides into, or some guides I should say. And it's a little finicky to get them in. It helps to kind of push the captive screws through first, and then it'll slot right in and we can screw these in, I think. And again, we've got this PoE in, so I'm pretty sure I can give this some PoE and it will actually pass it through to the remote device, I think, which means this DM Computer Center, I won't need to plug in the 24-volt power adapter because over the DM cable, it will be powering it. I'll tell you, this thing is ticking a bunch of boxes in my brain that I really like. PoE, power over Ethernet, meaning you can power arbitrary devices like this DM Computer Center or a Raspberry Pi or whatever you want over an Ethernet cable, or I should say a Cat5e cable. It's doing upscaling. Obviously, I'm into that, analog to HDMI upscaling. Being able to hook up older computers to newer gear to get higher fidelity output, love it. I'm really liking this thing. So we'll start with the inputs here, I guess. So we've got this DM in, and that's going to go to our VGA capture device thing, DM out. And so theoretically, that's going to power everything because we will be providing PoE power from my Unify network rack in the other room. In fact, the switcher is off, the big unit, because I was messing with it, and the power is already flowing to this thing. You can see the light turned on, the LAN lights and the DM stuff turned on briefly when I plugged it in. So that's working, I think. So we've got this as our input flowing into here. PoE is powering it. And then we're going to have to keep this one in the mix as our output. This is our HDMI output. from this guy, hopefully. And I've got to keep it on a pretty short leash because I'm running out of Ethernet cords here. So that is the DME in. And of course we need one more. I'd like to power this over PoE, which requires this port. So I rustled up this cable. I'm pretty sure this is not a T1 cable. I just looked at it. So that's PoE into that. And we might see signs of life as I plug this in to PoE. Let's see. Yeah, right there. Some lights turning on. So these are both powered right now. To summarize, input from the computer I'm about to show you into here. I'm going to configure it to output to here over HDMI. We need a computer, so this thing is my baby. I love this thing. This is a Windows XP machine, an IBM Think Center with a Pentium 4 inside. The capacitors haven't blown up yet, so let's get this hooked up over VGA to this guy. VGA's hooked up, and we're also going to get audio. So this thing has a 3.5 millimeter jack for audio input from the computer as well. Looking good. I've got a local PS2 mouse and keyboard for reasons I will explain later. Fired this thing back up. It seems happy. I've routed input 1 out to here. We're going to fire up the Think Center and see if we get an output. I have not tried this computer center before. We should have something by now. No luck so far, so let's bypass the whole switcher thing and go to the local HDMI out on this little guy. It's warm. It's definitely powered on. Wow, yeah. Oh, it was... Okay, it's back. Yeah, that is really nice. Again, recording the screen's not going to do it justice, but it looks really, really good. And it's very fast, very responsive. Okay. Now just got to figure out why the DM cable couldn't get that into my switcher here. On the front panel, which is hard to show you because of my setup, it said no cable connected to this thing, and you can see there's no activity indicators on the DM in, whereas on this DM out, we do have an activity indicator, so some cabling issue going on. And on the computer center that the computer's hooked up to, no indicators as well. But again, on the local HDMI there, looking pretty good. Because I've got it, let's try swapping out one of my DM-in cards over here. Bought the newer ones on eBay, I guess, so I've powered this off, obviously. It detected that card I just pulled out. I mean, it wasn't complaining about any errors or anything. But we'll try this. Get that hooked back up to PoE and the device itself. And we're going to hope for the best. And put this back into our other guy over here. Same exact behavior with this card. No indicator lights, nothing on the screen, no indicator lights over here. So I'm just doing something wrong. Pulled out this other Ethernet cable. This is one that I had made. So it's possible it's broken or something. I hate wrapping up my cables, so I'm kind of annoyed that I have to unwrap this one. It takes everything I have to organize my stuff. And now I'm just pulling everything out. Let's get that in there. And let's see what we get here. Oh, right. So that pulled the power from this thing. Let's let it reboot for a second. Yeah, no difference. Nothing on the screen. Technically speaking, I think I'm supposed to be using shielded cable, but this is such a short distance, and this thing isn't having any trouble with the cables I've been using, and this is a Cat 6 cable. Yeah, I'll have to do a little more research here. It's the next day. I came down here to start troubleshooting this some more. Put the PoE into these guys, let them boot up. Powered the big guy on, and it's just working now. On the DME in, on the left there, you can see I've got a green connectivity light, and I think the blinking amber means video or some sort of data is flowing over the cable. And it's the same story down here on the computer center unit. Got the route set up so that the video from this is flowing into the switcher over DM out on HDMI. And it's working perfectly. And it really doesn't look half bad. Certainly no lag. Let's get this thing flowing into my capture device to see if we've got audio of some type. This is what the HDMI to USB capture device is getting. And yeah, we've got sound. They should bring back oil. Ooh, 747. Oh yeah, I forgot about this. Good test for the capture if it can enter and exit games. Previously that would like totally confuse this card with my other things I was trying. I can't remember if I can play this game.
And welcome to the
I can.
Mesa Transit System. This automated train is provided for the security and convenience.
That's right, something weird going on with this computer. I
I
don't know why the video's in the upper left. What's really nice is when I'm over here, I also have a local monitor. So here's the game going, regardless of me capturing it on the other output. This is really nice. I think I'm going to be able to cook up a pretty good capture setup with all this gear. One last test for this big guy. I want to see if the double height output card works, even though it doesn't sit entirely flush. And yeah, it's kind of tricky to get this one lined up with two cards at once, basically. So it's in and flush. We'll just switch everything over like this. Yeah, it just seems kind of sketchy, like it's not meant for this thing. I suppose I could look that up real quick. DMCO53. Documentation says this is just fine, so power this bad boy up. I hooked my output up to an output. That was supposed to stay there. And this guy needs to come up here. Whoops. Working perfectly. All right. Wanted to point out something I'm still not a little clear on. So there's this USB input right here where you would be plugging in the computer, that Think Center I was using. That's no big deal. I could plug that right into the computer and it flows over the DM. And then here it takes the DM in, the video, USB, everything. And at least with my card configuration here, I can only just send the DM back out or HDMI. And my room controller only has HDMI out. It's got all these other ones, but not USB. Presumably, I just don't have the right room controller. I would imagine where I'm putting the monitor, I could plug in USB keyboard and mouse and control the remote machine. I think that's the idea. Sort of also complicating, all the modules I've ever seen have just the one USB. So is there like a splitter to get a mouse and keyboard? Do I need like a mouse and keyboard combo? If you're familiar with this gear, let me know. We've only just scratched the surface with what this stuff can do. So far, like on the big guy here, the 8x8, it has an input for a computer as well. There's a whole host of software that Crestron has. I think it's called Toolkit or something like that, and you can automate these things. There's a programming language called Simple to write scripts for these guys and all sorts of remote configuration stuff that we'll explore in the future. It seems like I need to do a little research before I dive into that. And it also sounds like these guys have an IP locally, and you can actually get into the DM port over Telnet and remotely configure an individual device. I'll have to try that in the future as well. But I'm pretty satisfied that I'm just plugging this stuff in and it's just working. Two more pieces of gear off screen. I tested this VGA to HDMI converter. It's independent, meaning it doesn't have that DM stuff. You don't hook it up to a switcher or anything. Works great as expected. And then we got this guy, the Professional Control Processor Pro 2. Got an input for the computer that we'll use on the front here. To the right, you've got activity indicators for all the COM ports on the back and some input, output, and relay stuff you can configure. Here are all those ports. We've got Ethernet coming in here, all the serial ports, and then another input for the computer. I think it's just the same thing. You can do it on the back or the front. We're not going to do much with this today other than power it up and see if we can talk to it over serial. Let's do that. Let's get it plugged in, flip it around. We'll get a USB to serial adapter on this thing. I have not Googled this thing or looked up any documentation or anything. I'm just guessing here because sometimes it's fun to do that. All hooked up. Let's see what we see over the console. It's silent, no fan. And I'm seeing garbage on the console. I am at the wrong baud rate. Broke down and looked at some instructions, and it claims you need that stupid software I was talking about. And it's going to auto-detect the baud rate, so I wonder if we can find out what's going on just by messing around here. It's got 32 megs of RAM. Dang. Program boot, yeah, that's that simple stuff I was talking about. Oh my. The system name is the Matrix QM Demo. Okay. There we go. 11.15.200. Let's see if that does what we need. Oh yeah, check this out. We are at a command prompt. Oh. Version. Software from 2009. Info. Oh man, dude, I don't know. This is going to be a whole world to discover. Let's look at the cards. Can you do like cards 4? I don't know. It works. I'm satisfied. I don't know what to use it for or how to use it, but I will figure that out in the future. So what is next for all this stuff? Well, I think this gear may have inspired me to embark upon a workshop and home lab infrastructure reimagining and upgrade project that I've been putting off for quite some time. Just behind this wall, I've got a patch panel and a KVM mounted to the wall that I'm not using yet. That KVM can actually hook up multiple machines over RJ45 Ethernet with these SIP pods. I want to make it easier to manage a bunch of machines on the bench at the same time and be able to faithfully capture VGA and other outputs along with audio, and I think this is going to solve this problem. It's not realistic to have this massive guy in the room here. 10 feet past that KVM I was just showing you are 2 server racks. Ideally, I would have it over there. So I've got some thinking to do about exactly how I want to set everything up, but I think this is the gear to do it with, and it's going to be fun. If you read between the lines on online forums and stuff, it sounds like Crestron likes to keep that toolbox stuff a little locked up. I was walking down the street the other day, and wouldn't you know it, I stumbled upon like a ton of the toolbox software. So maybe we'll look at that, I don't know. Basically, it'd be nice to be able to automate, you know, send input 1 to output 5 or, you know, whatever from a remote location the way this thing was meant to be used. But I will say the hardware is incredibly high quality, and I really like that without any software, no funny business, I was able to just plug this stuff in physically and start using that. I think that's a really good sign. Again, I'm always looking for a reason to either leverage the insane amount of Ethernet runs I have already or run more, and needing 2 for each remote computer, well, that's perfect. A huge thanks to Josh for giving me a killer deal on this gear. Oh, he also threw in a spare Cisco 2900, naturally. Not to mention the Sun server rack that we will be seeing in future videos. I have no idea where I'm going to put it yet. Thank you so much for following along, and I hope you like this video. If you'd like to support the channel, please consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one.